Listen, the chatter in the locker room tells the whole story. I've heard guys admit they were terrified of Mike. I've heard your generation confess they had nightmares about facing Kobe. But I have never heard a single soul say they fear LeBron. The hardwood used to be a battlefield for grown men. Now, the self-proclaimed king treats it like a dance floor, convincing himself he's the greatest, simply because he hung around long enough to compile stats that Jordan would have eclipsed in 8 seasons, if he played in today's soft era. But hold on, folks, because Shaquille O'Neal has finally seen enough. The Diesel's drawing a line in the sand. He wants the world to realize that logging 82 games in the brutal 90s is a completely different universe compared to 82 games in the 2020s. That is a fact. Shaq has officially reached his boiling point. From the questionable social circles and softened fashion choices to the utter lack of reverence for the gladiators who built this league, O'Neal is exposing the reality. And stick around, because by the end of this broadcast, you'll question the validity of James's entire narrative. Before we go deeper, make sure to smash that like button if you missed the days of real basketball. The NBA used to be about psychological warfare. Players left their souls on the paint every single night. It was combat. But LeBron James has transformed it into a high school variety show. If you missed the viral clip that started this firestorm, take a look at this. He literally called himself a goofy 41-year-old kid. It gets even more embarrassing. The Lakers were drowning in the standings, fighting for playoff survival, and their leader sat there telling the globe, he's just a big child. Are you kidding me? The media wants to place this man on the same pedestal as Michael Jordan and Kobe. Bryant? Please. Shaq lost respect not because of the ring count, but because your king is more concerned with being the class clown than a feared assassin. Analyze his pregame ritual. If you were up against the 90s Bulls, you didn't see Mike rehearsing a TikTok dance. You saw a sleep-deprived maniac with a cigar staring right through your chest, deciding exactly how he was going to destroy your livelihood that evening. If you faced Kobe, you received the Black Mamba death stare, a cold, unblinking gaze that made veterans forget how to dribble. But with LeBron, you get social media choreography. You get cringeworthy routines where he's shirtless, performing for the fans in the front row. We saw this just hours ago at the arena. James was going through what appeared to be a warm-up, but it looked more like a middle school drama club. Dress rehearsal. What is this new routine? He essentially launches the ball into the stratosphere, and when it drops, the whole squad squats in unison before he trots away. It's absurd. Shaq has been the loudest critic here, and frankly, the big fella is just voicing what every sane fan is thinking. On his podcast, he made it crystal clear, when you watch those ridiculous clips, you understand exactly why. No opponent has ever said they fear James. To O'Neal, the GOAT status isn't about winning a popularity contest. It is about dominance. You cannot rule the jungle if you are desperate to be everyone's best friend. Back in the day, if a legend caught you dancing before tip-off, they would take it as a declaration of war. They would use it as motivation to drop 50 points on your head. James, however, has made goofiness his brand, and it gets worse when you realize this isn't just a personality quirk, it's a lack of gravity. Even Kevin Garnett admitted the Celtics didn't give a damn about LeBron back then. KG's entire argument was that they broke him in 2010 specifically because nobody was afraid of him. They shattered him in Game 5. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more uncensored sports takes. The media and the league had a script, but the Celtics refused to follow it. You get it? That is how Boston took that series. Garnett said it plain as day. We didn't care about LeBron. They didn't fear him, and they didn't believe he could defeat all 5 of them. Now, contrast that with the legends regarding Jordan's aura. There are documented accounts of players terrified to even check into the game because his airness was on the floor. What makes this hilarious is how the internet is having a field day roasting LeBron's forced warm-up antics. It isn't just cringe, it is a distraction. While his teammates are trying to lock in, the supposed captain is treating the court like a stage for his next viral moment. Shaq's philosophy was always about focused destruction. You arrive at the arena, you shatter the backboard, you go home. You don't hang around for a 10-minute dance. Number. This is exactly why the fear factor is 0. You cannot be terrified of a guy who calls himself a goofy kid immediately after his squad takes a loss. When Jordan lost, he was a nightmare to be around for 3 days. When LeBron loses, well, He is front and center, putting on a show alongside heavy hitters. But icons like Shaquille O'Neal despise the vibe more than the numbers. They hate that the man dubbed the premier athlete of our time carries the emotional maturity of a high schooler, yet that isn't even the catalyst that made Shaq finally snap. If you want to pinpoint the exact moment the old guard washed their hands of LeBron James, it wasn't a bricked free throw or a blown coverage. It was back in 2016, moments after the Cavaliers pulled off that 3-1 miracle. LeBron stared down the lens and placed the crown on his own head. He didn't wait for the greats to vote. He simply announced he was the best to ever lace them up. He literally said, "That one right there made me the greatest player of all time." And folks, that statement sealed his fate. In the golden age of Shaq, Jordan, and Kobe, you never called yourself the king. You forced the opposition to admit it because they were too exhausted from getting their tails kicked by you to argue. Do you think for a single second MJ sat at a podium begging the press to validate his legacy? Absolutely not. The true GOAT was too busy going 6 for 6 in the finals and ensuring the entire state of Utah had nightmares for a week. Kobe Bryant was cut from the same cloth, 5 rings, 0 self-promotion. But LeBron craves the applause, and he certainly relies on the marketing machine. He needs you to stare at that chosen one ink so you don't analyze the actual resume too closely. If you want the real stats the media hides, smash that like button and subscribe right now. What infuriates me personally is how the press loves to force feed us this fairy tale that James is the best ever simply because his career has dragged on longer than a superhero movie franchise. They love shouting that LeBron is the all-time scoring leader, but let's be real, it is essentially a glorified attendance award. It took him 23 seasons to compile that total. Michael Jordan snatched 10 scoring titles in effectively 11 full seasons with Chicago. Let that marinate. LeBron has managed exactly 1 scoring title in over 20 years. And if we are discussing pure, unadulterated dominance, James isn't even in the same stratosphere as O'Neal. In the early 2000s, Shaq was a glitch in the Matrix. The Diesel spearheaded a three-peat where he took home Finals MVP honors every single time. And don't even get me started on the championship resume. The King holds a losing record on the grandest stage, a literal 22-33 record in individual finals games. That means when the pressure is maxed out, statistically speaking, LeBron is more likely to walk off the floor with a loss than a trophy. I'm just saying, when the chips were down, MJ left nothing to chance. He didn't leave it to a judge's decision. And that right there is the cardinal sin Shaq cannot forgive. The manipulation. True titans like Bird, Magic, and Mike stayed in the lab until they mastered the recipe. They didn't run for the exit the moment the kitchen got too hot. But LeBron, he treated the NBA like a game of musical chairs, always hunting for the easiest path. In 2010, he dropped the decision, the most narcissistic hour in TV history, running to Wade and Bosh because he couldn't topple the Celtics by himself. When that roster got stale, he sprinted back to Cleveland because they had Kyrie in the trade chips for Kevin Love. When that situation burned out, he hopped a private flight to LA to ride Anthony Davis's coattails. Shaq sees this for exactly what it is, a man who didn't conquer the league, but maneuvered front offices to stack the deck. This is why, when O'Neal was asked for his all-time starting 5 recently, he notoriously snubbed LeBron in favor of killers like Kobe, Mike, and even Steph Curry. Honestly, the LeBron saga is about a freak athlete who played long enough to make the numbers look insurmountable. But the Shaq saga, that is about a level of brute force dominance that LeBron never sniffed. Jordan has 5 MVPs and 10 scoring titles. Kobe had 5 rings and a killer instinct that didn't require a PR firm to interpret. LeBron holds a 4-6 finals record and changes jerseys as often as he changes sneakers. So, ask yourself, do you want a monarch who earned the throne through blood and loyalty? Or do you want a guy who stat padded his way to glory while taking every shortcut in the manual? Shaq made his call. He knows that being the GOAT isn't about how many years you can survive in a league this soft. It is about how many wars you won when the NBA was actually a battlefield. And when you look at how LeBron disrespects the pioneers who built this league, you realize the King title is just a catchy slogan. Before we get to the wildest part, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Now, can we discuss the absolute brain rot coming out of the Mind the Game podcast lately? In January, LeBron looked us in the eye with a straight face and tried to claim that playing 82 games today is physically harder than it was in the 90s. His entire argument rests on pace and space, as if running cardio in an open gym is somehow tougher than getting your ribs rearranged by a Bill Laimbeer elbow. It is pure gaslighting. He wants you to believe fast equals difficult, while completely ignoring the fact that back then, the paint was a literal crime scene. It is a slap in the face to every... We need to talk about the absolute warriors who barely survived the sheer brutality of the bad boy Pistons era. These titans had to submerge themselves in literal trash cans filled with ice just to walk the next morning. No $100,000 cryo labs here. Shaq Diesel dropped a bombshell, claiming LeBron's long career is only possible because the league effectively outlawed real defense. His logic hits hard. If the NBA hadn't created freedom of movement rules and flagrant penalties for cited breathing on someone, the King wouldn't be dunking at 41. He would be retired. The Big Diesel survived a time when you could practically assault someone in the paint with zero consequences. Nowadays, Bron sits out a Tuesday night game in Charlotte because a computer says his muscles are tired, while legends like Isaiah Thomas were securing championships on one good leg. If you love real basketball talk, make sure to like and subscribe right now. It gets worse when you see how the rulebook rolled out the red carpet for modern scoring. The 2004 hand-checking ban and defensive 3-second violations didn't just boost, they made the true lockdown defender extinct. Shaq has stated repeatedly that with today's spacing and soft whistles, he would average 60 points and 30 rebounds because no one could legally stop him. But if you think the TikTok dances and inflated numbers are annoying, you haven't seen the bottom of the iceberg. This is the moment where he arguably lost the respect of the old guard forever. While Jordan and O'Neal were busy building business empires they actually controlled, James seemed focused on auditioning for the Hollywood celebrity circle. Yeah, we have to address the elephant in the room regarding Diddy. It is 2026. The footage is everywhere. That clip of LeBron on Instagram Live, grinning ear to ear while shouting out those infamous parties, has aged like milk and stained his reputation. Everyone heard him say there is no party like one of those parties. And now, the context has completely shifted. Back in the 90s, alpha dogs like Kobe and Shaq kept their circles tight and their business offline. They were the bosses. But LeBron, he wasn't just a guest. He looked like the ultimate hype man for a lifestyle that is now being exposed for some very dark behavior. And then there is the photo that practically broke the maid outfit. Whether you call it marketing or a meme, many critics see it as a clear ritual of humiliation. The fact that the face of the league is tied to that imagery is exactly why Shaq views the situation with such disdain. Picture Michael Jordan, a man who would bet his life just to prove he was the top dog, letting a music mogul put him in a dress. Picture Kobe playing dress up just to secure a film. It is impossible, but it goes beyond the parties. It is about proudly promoting a circle that engaged in some incredibly questionable activities. Even his diehard defenders struggle to spin this one. Speaking of supporters, nobody has tested the patience of the fan base quite like James, turning the world's best league into a part-time gig. Let's be real. You cannot claim the throne if you only wear the crown when it is convenient. In 2026, we witnessed a career low that basically ends the GOAT debate for anyone paying attention. On February 10th, he sat out against the Spurs, citing left foot arthritis. Why is this a massive deal? Because that absence officially disqualified him from any NBA honors under the new 65-game requirement. For the first time since 2005, LeBron is not all NBA. Not for lack of skill, but because availability is the best ability, and he wasn't there. He has spent years gaslighting fans on his podcast, tearing down the 82-game schedule as if it is a crime against humanity. But let's cut the excuses. Sometimes you just have to suit up and perform. It is not like we are asking for much on a nationally televised broadcast. Don't forget to smash that like button if you missed the old school mentality. In the 80s, 82 games meant exactly that. You didn't check your biometric data or soft tissue charts before lacing up. You played because that was your profession. Consider the agony these icons endured. Larry Bird played with a back so messed up he had to lie flat on the floor by the bench just to prevent his spine from locking up. Isaiah Thomas dropped 25 points in a finals quarter while essentially hopping on a broken ankle. Even Kobe Bryant secured a ring in 2010 with a broken index finger on his shooting hand. He didn't beg for rest, he just changed his shot mechanics. And do not get me started on his airness. Michael Jordan played all 82 games in 9 separate seasons. 9. Even at age 40, on a mediocre Wizards squad, MJ played every single night because he felt a duty to the fans who bought tickets. Jordan's philosophy was simple. Listen, the old school mentality was simple. If you could walk, you laced them up. It was never about resting. It was about proving yourself every single night. It was about understanding that somewhere in the nosebleeds, there's a fan who scraped together every penny just to see you perform. You owed it to that guy to put on a show. But today, that mindset has been replaced by the most toxic machinery in basketball, the LeBron James PR spin cycle. And folks, before we dive deep into this controversy, make sure to smash that subscribe button for more unfiltered hoops truth. If you think the legends of the game are just bitter old heads, think again. They aren't jealous, they've got nothing left to prove. Their legacies are set in stone, so the idea that they're hating is ridiculous. The truth, they are just tired of the narrative. In late 2025, Charles Barkley finally let loose on the Bill Simmons podcast and said what everyone was thinking. He pointed out that with LeBron's camp, if you don't worship at the altar of the king, they act like you've committed high treason against the state. Sir Charles was basically calling out the absolute delusion plaguing modern sports media. If you mention that Jordan snagged 10 scoring titles in 11 active seasons, while LeBron only managed 1 in 23 years, the fanboys attack you. They treat objective facts like hate crimes. But even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the man whose scoring record stood for decades, has seen enough. The captain himself publicly criticized LeBron, calling his behavior embarrassing and beneath the dignity of a legend, particularly those childish outbursts on social media. When the inventor of the skyhook tells you to grow up, you know you fumbled the bag. And hey, if you agree with Kareem, go ahead and hit that like button right now. The reality is, we see a superstar who invests more in preserving his $2 million body than preserving the competitive integrity of the league. You can rack up all the counting stats you want, but you cannot buy the respect of the pioneers who built this league with blood and sweat. But here is the kicker, the part that turns this whole GOAT debate into a comedy sketch. Remember the clutch gene we talked about earlier? The one he seems to lack when the lights are brightest? If you value basketball history, the 2011 finals is the smoking gun. And frankly, the critics are 100% correct. That was year one of the Heatles in Miami. They were heavy favorites, James was in his absolute physical prime, and the stage was set for domination. Instead, we witnessed the biggest meltdown in the history of pro sports. He didn't just lose, he completely vanished. The self-proclaimed king averaged a measly 17.8 points for the entire series. But wait, it gets even worse. In a pivotal Game 4, with the championship hanging in the balance, he put up just 8 points. He logged 45 minutes and shot 3 for 11 from the field. Can you picture MJ or the Mamba dropping single digits in a finals game? Impossible. Those guys would go down firing every bullet in the clip before they turned passive. He was so shaken that he was deferring to role players in crunch time, averaging just 3 points in the fourth quarters of that series. Think about that. The supposed greatest of all time was getting outplayed by Jason Terry and the 5'10" Jay Barea. And let's talk about leadership. Before Game 5, cameras caught James and D. Wade mocking Dirk Nowitzki for playing with a 102-degree fever. They were fake coughing in the tunnel like a couple of immature middle school bullies. But karma has a way of working things out. Dirk responded by dropping 29 points in Game 5, pushing Dallas to the brink of glory with a 3-2 series lead. The Mavericks closed it out in Game 6 on Miami's home floor. That is how a real legend handles business. But hold on, because the cultural impact is arguably worse. This is where many believe he ruined the competitive soul of the NBA. The league used to be built on boundaries and bad blood. Shaq would invent feuds just to fuel his dominance. Contrast that with the banana boat era, where everyone is best friends and nobody wants to bruise an ego. When you are all vacationing on yachts and sipping wine together in July, where's the fire to tear each other's hearts out in June? That killer instinct has been replaced by brand synergy. And speaking of branding, we have to address the elephant in the room, clutch sports. Behind the curtain, there is a narrative control machine that would make politicians blush. Through Rich Paul and his agency, they have constructed a media force field that deflects all accountability. By 2026, the pattern is undeniable. Watch the headlines closely. If he wins, he is a tactical genius. If he loses, the narrative instantly shifts to he needs more help or cut him some slack, he is 41. Rich Paul flipped player empowerment into player manipulation, shuffling rosters to ensure there is always a built-in excuse. It is no longer about who is the best baller, it is about who has the best PR team to bury the game tape. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us back to why Shaq draws the line. It was never about the total points or how long he played, it is about the spirit of competition. Shaq doesn't resent the talent. He resents that the most physically gifted athlete of our time decided to be a celebrity, rather than simply being a hooper. Don't forget to subscribe and let us know in the comments, is it talent or PR? See you in the next one.